won't go into detail because spoilers and because I'm not your movie sucks, so who cares. But it was bad. Also, the theater was horrible. I expected a lot of kids, but there were literal Iraqis players amongst the kids. It was terrible. Edit, people seem to think that I was surprised that it would suck. I made this post to spite the people defending the film. We all knew it was gonna suck. XD. Caught this one on Peacock, was not going to pay hard-earned money to see it in a theater. The first 20 minutes tries to set up a sappy drama, it's so tonally out of place. None of it actually makes you emotionally invested in the characters. The Black Phone did a much better job at this kind of storytelling. I don't think that it's a spoiler to say that there aren't any real jump scares in the movie, despite the material it's based on. There are a few fake-outs, but nothing that conjures up the feeling of dread that the game invokes. I just don't understand who this movie is for. Kids will find it boring and adults will find it quite toothless. Right? I mean, I knows it's page 13, but I've seen some very line-writing ones that really push the limits on scary imagery. I swear this one could probably play on a kid's TV station with very few edits. It's actually getting rave user reviews and an A cinema score. Which is crazy cause I tried watching it today on Peacock and was bored out my mind. The fan base is really carrying this movie, much like how the Super Mario movie did. Although I can understand Super Mario more cause it's a crowd pleaser, but this one is just so bland and forgettable. The kids only cared about the references made. They literally did the "dude pride rock" thing. Adults like the nostalgia and seeing stuff from their mid-teens. I'm 19, so I'm within the same range of most of the original fans. It was a disappointment. I knew it would suck, I just didn't know it would suck this much. What made it worse was, again, the slutty cosplayers amongst the little babbies. How do you have slutty cosplay for FNAF? They're just Chuck E. Cheese robots. Skin-tight puppet cosplay. The target audience is FNAF fans. The overall reaction from die-hard fans has been almost nothing but praise. Bullshit, I'm a fan and I hated this movie. Right? I'm not even a fan, in the traditional sense, I can just recite a ton of the lore by osmosis from FNAF obsessed friends. And then read too many wiki pages and watched too many playthroughs because I got invested. I get it was trying to make a more linear story and a character that doesn't have insight into what's going on. Michael knows William Afton, OFC, but my god it was awful LMAO. It was really funny honestly. My friend and I and the rest of the theater were losing our shit half the time. I get they were trying to make references with the name and the appearance of a certain suit and whatnot, but it just made me more confused as to what was a reference and what was using the game material. Alright? Not every fan is going to like the movie, but it's undeniable that a lot of fans have given a lot of positive feedback. I don't really like to use Rotten Tomatoes scores, but it has an 89% for a reason. Not a good reason. Look at IMDb's rating distribution and see how many 10s are given. FNAF attracts younger fans and people with not a lot of shit to do can just pump up the numbers for a movie to make it look better. Also come on, Rotten Tomatoes is not a good metric for actually judging movies, it's just not. I wasn't bringing it up to judge the movie. Original commenter called bullshit to there being positive reactions. So I brought up an example of there being positive reaction. Feeling of dread from the game? It's a resource manager with some jump scares thrown in. LOL, are we really at the stage of acting like it's a scary series now? Someone finally said it, the Five Nights at Freddy's games weren't even that good. LOL. Nah, that's just cap. The jump scares aren't even the scary part, it's the tension and suspense that makes it scary, and it is effective at building that up. What with the sound design, tone and setting, along with the game mechanics, like the power function in FNAF 1 or listening for the animatronics breathing in FNAF 4. It's fine if you don't personally find it scary, but it comes across as extremely condescending to act like it's always been shit and everyone else who disagrees is just deluding themselves. Anyone who likes it hasn't been around the horror genre, so many done to death tropes. The big twist was really predictable, the character motivations were really generic. Nothing fresh here. But hey, the target audience likes it, so whatever. Just my take. As a FNAF fan I liked it. As a horror fan I did not. It's a pretty good FNAF movie, but it's a bad movie in general LMAO. Same deal with recent stuff like Smile and The Boogeyman. They couldn't be more derivative and predictable. I have no fucking idea why Smile was getting such good reviews. That was possibly the most boring movie I've ever seen. It had basically the same concept as It Follows, but that one was actually kinda good. What? The horror movie for children that everyone thought was gonna be bad was bad? It can't be. Surely you jest. But nobody wanted it to be for children, that's the overall point here. All the good reviews you see are from people who are still in middle school. Is it really still that popular with kids? It seems like the FNAF fandom peaked 5 years ago. Dude, the attention the Security Breach game garnered was like 90% children under the age of 14. This series is exponentially rising in attention, and the biggest chunk of it is newer, younger viewers, especially with this Disney-ass movie they just released. FNAF has now been officially killed. The movie being good was the last hope I had in the series, and then they announced it was gonna be PG-13, and I just knew this was going to kill the series, in terms of quality. It simply is not a kid-friendly lore. They took the boo-boo here by scrapping the dreadful horror of the series and making it campy and fun and friend-centered. Not at fucking all what FNAF was meant to be, and the fact that Scott Cawthon even gave this the green light should be an utter disappointment to himself. I played FNAF on release and was already an adult. It's the type of thing that's good to play maybe 1 or 2 nights, watch a quick 10-minute lore video on, and move on. But no, this shit went and got all up in the zeitgeist of American youth. Seeing it grow and how the fandom reacts reminds me of Ike's puberty episode in South Park. I'm gonna tame Foofa's strange. That is exactly how the FNAF fandom has appeared to me. A bunch of Zoomers getting coked up on a YouTube algorithm and React binge that has hooked their dopamine feed up to constant consumption of FNAF media. Kind of like how some people in my generation grew up demented perverts that sexualize Pokemon. I'm picturing some reject running around talking about taming Chica's strange. This is all to say I hate franchise worship in general, and my interest in watching the FNAF film is about on par with watching a marathon of Yo Gabba Gabba. I'm just glad it didn't take itself seriously, or it would have been miserable. The animatronics and set design for Freddy's is neat, but it's not very good overall. It tried to be serious in some places and I couldn't help but laugh. It's fun to watch and cringe at, but I feel bad that my friend paid $25 for us to see it. Oh yeah, money-wise it's good for a cheap ticket day, but nothing above that. Whatever it is, the only thing that I was waiting for the epic Springtrap scene, but 1. My dude died like he was waiting for it. 2. He didn't try to scare the animatronics with the costume, he just put the mask for nothing. 3 inches the game, he had such a charismatic voice, but they blew it up in the movie with such a pretended act. And it goes on. At the end of the day I would give it a 8 if they could manage this amazing scene, but my day is ruined, damn you all to hell, dash. It wasn't too bad, but it got kinda goofy. So it didn't really feel like horror. It was very kid-safe. I wonder if I would have liked it more had it been rated R. Check out Willis Wonderland. That is the perfect movie that will satisfy anyone looking for that scary animatronic movie. Nicolas Cage killed his role. I've seen it more than once and it still holds up. I would rate Willis Wonderland a 9 out of 10 and FNAF movie 1 out of 10. The acting and the lore and the pace and the scares were all so bad it's not even worth watching. Saw it, was bored to death. I mean, I didn't like the games. The only reason anybody liked him was probably due to Markiplier and MatPat. Even so, Willy's Wonderland is a much better version of this. Even my girlfriend, who is easily scared and covers her eyes in horror movies, was bored. Also, seeing this right after Saw X was a bad choice, going from a movie I thought was going to be terrible but turned out good to a movie that I thought would suck did suck. Its biggest sin though is being so fucking boring. Poor Joe S. H. Hutcherson, he just can't ever find the right role. Possible spoilers. I just finished watching it and I'll start by saying I'm not a mega fan. I've played all the games but never watched a 6-hour deep dive into the lore of the game, you know? And I was surprised at how good the effects were. The animatronics looked amazing. Seeing characters like Foxy and Chica on the big screen was amazing, but I genuinely think this was an awful movie. My friend couldn't even name the characters 5 minutes after the credits roll. My screening was full of early teens or people wearing FNAF shirts or bringing FNAF plushies in. The story was a terrible mess, and when you think FNAF you think jump scares and murder robots, not some silly story about a guy trying to keep custody of his sister and having to essentially dream walk trying to look for his brother. It was so drawn out. You wait the entire movie to see something happen, and when it finally does it's completely underwhelming. If it's too difficult to adapt a game into a movie without it being boring, or if the story is just difficult to adapt, then don't bother doing it. And even if the movie was just for the fans, that doesn't excuse it for being awful as a standalone movie. The film was constantly confused and tried to appeal to too many age ranges with a 15 rating. I wasn't expecting blood and guts everywhere, but I think literally 5 people die in the movie. All of them are off screen. Someone said it was like a gateway horror for people 13 and under as a way to ease them into more scary films, and I honestly couldn't agree more. I like to draw parallels to the Mortal Kombat movie because I personally loved the film. However, I know that people who don't play the games or have extensive knowledge of the story wouldn't enjoy it anywhere near as much as I did, and you shouldn't have to play like 5 other games or know the backstory to every character just to be able to enjoy a movie. That's just ridiculous. I feel like the only people who would get enjoyment out of this are people who absolutely love the franchise and the characters, who will ignore all flaws and faults just because they used to watch Markiplier do Let's Plays, or people who are so young they've never seen an actual scary movie in their life. As someone who is lore-heavy into FNAF, it felt like questionably dry and flavorless pizza. I've been actively following the games plus content and lore. Not recently, but enough to say the movie was rather predictable. It didn't even give the viewer anything to ponder about. There was no meat on the bone for me to absorb what is or will go down in the movie. Asterisk, the only 2 jump scares, if you want to call it that, was from Balloon Boy. Asterisk, in terms of the main segments throughout the film, it's so poorly done where sure maybe Billy or Sarah will struggle to follow. But for the adults the film just felt cliché, basic. Asterisk, honestly, is this a horror movie or a slumber party featuring animatronics at a pizzeria? Asterisk, to recycle a traumatic event throughout the movie a handful of times was excessive. Honestly, it could have been done once and allow for the viewer to understand it. Utterly boring. I played the games a few years ago. I'm 18 years old and the cinema was packed of prepubescent teens who were giggling away at some of the very corny and unfunny jokes and Easter eggs in the film. I'm not a huge fan and don't know every ounce of lore, but I've watched a fair few theories and such on YouTube when I've been bored, so I wasn't completely clueless about the background of FNAF. Still, I was sat scratching my head and hoping Freddy would show up at the cinema and end it for me before I had to sit through 1 hour 50 minutes of utter yawns. To be honest, the last 15 minutes picked up, focused on the animatronics, the story, and was engaging. However, it just wasn't enough to make up for an hour and a half of utter boring and seemingly irrelevant story. It seemed pieced together, something which is upsetting considering how in-depth the game lore is. The story mainly focused on the security guard and how he lost his brother or something, rather than focusing on the animatronics and the horror element, which is when it really got engaging. But unfortunately there was about 15 minutes of scenes with the animatronics actually in it. The rest was very poor scripting between the security guard and his sister and a police officer, who again just seemed irrelevant. This film could have been so much better if it had just focused on its key selling points of the game, horror and story. But when you're an hour in and the animatronics are dancing and playing games with a 10-year-old child, I think it's safe to say the film sadly hasn't delivered. Honestly, I would give it a miss. Even if you are a staunch fan, the movie doesn't give you anything. It's not really an explanation of the lore, or even scary. It's simply a game series totaling decades worth of YouTube lore and theories videos in the space of 1 hour 50 minutes, with plenty of opportunity for toilet breaks or even the chance to get up and leave. Got to say, the animatronics were brilliant to watch and the last 15 minutes delivered. Just was not good overall though, strayed too far from its original origins, a horror game.